The act of invading is one of inevitable suffering, but it is a suffering we who invade all choose to undergo. Throughout this video, I'll be reflecting on my experiences with Dark Souls 3 invasions and the game as a whole, while periodically stopping to comment on the clips at hand. I made 2 glass cannons, 1 dex, 1 strength, in an attempt to train myself to better account for being punished, and instead found that invading in Dark Souls 3 was no longer particularly fun, and therefore that these builds will probably be a good way to conclude this game's life cycle. And prepare for Demon Souls. Here I've elected to use a simple but effective Uchi katana to deal with this solo host who is also using some sort of katana. I'm assuming it's the same one. The joy of the Uchi is that it's a very well-rounded weapon, and accomplishes most things very well. You'll notice I go for the one-handed attacks since they have slightly more range than the two-handed attacks, which is something not a lot of people know. And with no weapon in my left hand, I'm able to use the weapon art for free. For this video, I'm using a soul level 60 plus 6 dexterity semi-glass cannon inspired by G9's recent return and use of light roll Flynn's ring setup. It's sufficiently powerful, punishing to use and punishing to be hit by, though the act of using it is one of masochism. You are punished with death for even one mistake too many, something every invader knows all too well. This build and the reality it forces the player to confront acts as a microcosm of the Dark Souls 3 multiplayer format. You, completely helpless against an onslaught of overleveled phantoms, latency, and bonfire duelists, must compete with advantages far greater than you could ever construct with any build. And yet, we invade anyway, if for no other reason than to have some effect on some other player's game somewhere out in the world. This is not to say that we should not try to win. On the contrary, doing one's best with minimal assistance is a triumph unto itself. All invasions should be winnable in theory, but not all invasions are won in practice. I don't have to explain why. The simple joys of the Uchi katana, here used to compete with the ringed knight straight-sword. You are only ever close to even footing in a 1v1, with the maximum health and Estus differential being so great. Naturally, a good invader will be prepared, but any host will be as well. It is in your best interest to seek players who are ill-prepared by gaming the level and weapon matchmaking, because any invader that hosts will beat almost every invader that comes their way, provided they never actually play the game. And the act of actually playing the game is what all invasions come down to in Dark Souls 3. Will the host play the game, or won't they? Here's where invasions in multiplayer start to break down. There isn't a timer that requires you to win by a certain time, and there's no reason why a host and their phantoms shouldn't just wait at the bonfire. You have no reason to ever approach 3+ players on their own. Here, however, is a wonderful example of players playing the game. I kill the phantom, and then get caught by the second swing due to the enemy collisions, which was entirely my mistake to make and is completely fair, though here I invade them again, and it goes somewhat differently. Back to what I was saying. You, a solitary invader, and the host, seeking every possible advantage, that of having no silly game to deal with while they pummel you with their friends, will wait for an infinite amount of time until you cave and approach, or the host simply plays the game. The player has no incentive to progress in the game, complete the level, or do anything but wait at the bonfire until one of you gets bored, and either turns off the game or you black crystal out. You as the invader have no incentive to kill the host who is waiting by the bonfire, and unless you just do not care about the outcome so much, like myself, would be best suited to wait in the level and fire great arrows until the host is sufficiently annoyed or drained of resources that they fight. As a result, I'm using a build that it is designed to kill or be killed, increasing the number of iterations and invasions and reducing my downtime dramatically. I'll either deal enough damage to remove the phantoms instantly, or I'll be killed for even attempting to fulfill my role as an enemy in the game. GG, go next. Learn from the mistakes, recognize your victories. But it doesn't stop there, really. The middle ground between co-opers, gank squads, and solo hosts is hard to define. Here you'll have someone who seems to just be playing through the game normally, and I'll treat them like all the rest. It's the experience that was intended when the game was made. And that intention, for better or worse, has led to a variety of side effects. Namely, the duplication of items ad infinitum, the use of save states to keep such items, the abuse of various glitches, to a lesser degree, No, I'm not judging any of this. I use save states a lot myself. It helps keep track of all of my builds and stops me from draining necessary resources for invading. What little resources I use. Here's a fabulous example of the third hit latency R1 that you'll get on PS4 sometimes. Depends on the location of the other player for PC, but on PS4 it's pretty consistent. This is one of the things you simply cannot avoid in an invasion, especially on PS4. Yes, you can alter the way you play based on latency, but you can't entirely account for losing your entire health bar to one R1, you know? I understand that with another Phantom there, yes, you should be more careful, but I also had a co-invader, so I didn't think that any one person in that invasion would be able to delete me instantly. Not something you can really account for, just something you have to accept. That with the netcode in this game being the way it is, sometimes that's just going to happen. Which is why I say things like all invasions are winnable in theory, but not all are in practice. Sometimes a host is going to get saved by summon lag. Sometimes Comcast is going to tell you no, and it's just the way it is. Actually, I can't entirely blame Comcast, because we know how bad the netcode in this game is. I soon realized that the Onakiri and Obadachi were one of the better dex weapons to use on this build. Probably any twin weapon buffed using the Flynn rings and Lloyd's sword ring setup would be superior to just like a plain katana. And I believe that was my favorite weapon to use with this setup, more so than any of the other dex weapons, any of the strength weapons I used. Definitely the Onakiri and Obadachi were my favorite. They had excellent reach, they did fantastic damage, they had a devastating combo, and then look at this wonderful backstab here. This is the only reason I show this invasion. Well, aside from the next clip. But it's a fabulous backstab into getting demolished. I'm chasing this guy down, not really thinking that people can drop down from up there. I thought it was only further down that you could drop down, but I miscalculated that. And once again, a fascinating, wonderful example of people actually playing the game that you don't always get. And a vast majority of my losses are from people not playing the game. Because let's be real, as an invader you don't have much choice but to be an enemy in the game. Yeah, you can shoot great arrows, and yes, you can force interactions, but for the most part, if a host is just chasing you with his phantoms, you have very little access to other options. Sometimes the host is using a dried finger, and you're able to deal with them from the distraction of another phantom. And that's all it takes. Here I had another set of co-opers. I see the Fallen Knight set, and I give them a friendly wave, and I realize quickly that they're not looking at their games respectively. So I just give this guy a nice pat on the back, and in hindsight I realize I probably could have deleted the Phantom with a combo, but I didn't bother. I'm doing purple invasions here mostly because I felt like it fit with the theme of a naked guy running around with just one weapon. But it did piss me off a couple of times because I would kill a Phantom and then the game would be like, oh, you did it, you won, and then it would just bring me out of the game. So I would frenetically try to kill the host while it was despawning me. And I switched back and forth between red and purple a couple of times as I felt it was necessary. People don't really do purple invasions anymore because it's a liability to other reds. If they see you, they don't know if they're on your side or not. But I always invade as an invader, as a purple, so I've yet to actually encounter a red that wanted to kill me, which is nice. Well, at least recently, of course. I'm sure at some point in the past I've had to deal with a red that wanted me dead. I don't know what these guys are doing. They are not paying attention. So I wipe this white off the face of the earth. And I'm ready to boogie with the Fallen Knight guy, but I'm getting swept away, and I can't do it. Which is a shame, but it happens. It's the curse of choosing to invade as a purple at all. Something we all outgrew in the early days of the game. And I haven't done for a long, long time. But it was nice to just kind of pop in, kill someone, pop out, you know? It was a lot more chill. The pressure was off. You didn't have to deal with all 3 or 4 people at once. Generally speaking, it was a lot better. I saw someone moving around down here, so I direct the Aldrich and I follow him, because if the Aldrich dies, then whatever, we'll get another Aldrich, but if I die, who knows if I'll ever get back in. So here I'm fiddling with the controls, just trying to get down. And I see all 3 of them. Ready to obliterate us. And now I see vestiges, and I realize that this guy must die first. There is no choice but to get rid of vestiges spam, or I have no chance of getting out of this invasion. This is what I'd like to call very, very poor use of vestiges. Namely, using it while someone is aware that you have it. Vestiges are only really effective when they're thrown off screen, or when you're fighting somebody else. And as a result, I quickly dispatched them. Katana running R1 is a beautiful thing, truly. And also the R2. It's pretty good as far as a poke, and it acts just like a Claymore R2, just without the hyper armor. And I mean, if you've got that much range, do you need the hyper armor? Something I don't do enough, and have been meaning to get into, as far as using the katanas and various sword weapons, is intentionally whiffing the first R1 to hit with the second R1. Something I see a lot of people do, at meta level mostly. So here I've taken it upon myself to distract Black Knight cosplayer number 1. And I accidentally hit this guy, so I start to move away from him. As I've said, I'm more interested in winning the invasion, so I'll never really take it upon myself to focus Aldriches or Reds to try and get out, because that would be stupid and counterproductive. I would never intentionally try to make a Red's life harder, since I know what they're up against as much as anyone. The rest of this video is pretty much a gank. The Aldriches that are here with me are actually fairly decent players, and they were able to deal with the other Phantom fairly well, and then we're able to deal with this guy here, swinging around the Farron meme sword. The beautiful thing about the fast roll is that it gets you out of just about any situation. The not-so-beautiful thing about it is that unless your opponent animates their attacks, you have no way to dodge on reaction for a lot of weapons. Even a straight sword can be dodged on reaction, but it requires that you can see the attack coming out. And I think that something I'll talk about more in my strength video is about the hit stun of attacks that do hit you, alongside spell balancing and various game design choices that were made, and did not end up being the best, especially for invaders. I don't know what this Aldrich is using, but his sword didn't do very much damage to me, and I have -4 all absorptions. But he is smart enough to switch to spear here, which is really good. Maybe he's doing like an honest invader type deal, which is beyond me. I could never do that. I have no patience. God, I love the katana running R1. It's just so nice. Beautiful. GG's to everyone, and I'll see you in the second part of this video where I do a strength variation of this build, and talk more about the act of masochism that is Dark Souls 3 invading.